Hey everyone, hope you're doing wonderful out there. I threw together a little compilation of all the Frankenstein Halloween specials I did a couple years ago. Hopefully this holds you over till the new videos come, and they're coming soon, I promise. Until then, enjoy this trip down memory lane.
How do you do? Mr. Carl Lemley feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
That has got to be one of the best intros to a movie ever. Welcome back to Meg Movie Drive-In, everyone. It's the Halloween season, so let's do one of horror's most iconic movies, and one of its most iconic monsters, all the way back from 1931, Frankenstein. Now let's get this out of the way right in the beginning. Frankenstein is the name of the guy that created the monster. The name of the monster is either, well, the monster or the fiend. This movie is based off Mary Shelley's 1818 novel called Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus. Directed by James Wells, this film is one of the original Universal movie monsters, alongside Dracula, the Mummy, the Wolfman, and my personal favorite, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Oh yeah, can't forget the Invisible Man either. Alright, let's dig up some dead people and make us a monster. After the credits, we see a burial of someone who just recently died, and then we see Dr. Henry Frankenstein, played by Colin Clive, and his sidekick Fritz, played by Dwight Fry. Once the ceremony is over, they dig up the body and head back to his laboratory. We then meet Dr. Waldman, played by Edward Van Sloan. He's given a lecture on brain surgery. He has two brains on display, one of a normal man and one of a criminal. Guess which one Fritz ends up stealing? This is Victor, played by John Bowles, who is summoned by Elizabeth, Henry's fiancée, played by Mae Clark. She is worried about him all alone up in his laboratory, just day in and day out, working on his experiments. Elizabeth and Victor go to see Dr. Waldman and try to convince him to go get Henry and get him to take a break and tell them what's going on up there. Henry has his creation all ready for his experiment. Right when he's about to bring it to life, Elizabeth, Walden, and Victor show up at his tower, and that's where his lab is. Henry decides to let them stay after they call him crazy and mad.
Crazy, am I? We'll see whether I'm crazy or not.
Henry tells Walden he has figured out how to bring life back to the dead through his work. After some crazy thunder and lightning, the experiment is a success, and Dr. Frankenstein yells probably the most famous line in movie history.
It's alive! Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Well, right next to...
I'll be back.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I am your father.
Groovy.
Yeah, that list can go on for days. Let's move on. I love hearing him laugh in that insane laugh with the thunder slowly fading out. This is Henry's father, Baron Frankenstein, played by Frederick Kerr. He is concerned that Henry is spending way too much time in that tower, and he wants to know why. He thinks it's another woman, and that's what's taking him so long to marry Elizabeth. Walden wants Frankenstein to stop what he's doing now before it gets way out of hand, but Henry is too busy basking in his own triumph. Waldman has to break the news to Henry that the brain that was put in the monster,
Stolen from my laboratory, was a criminal brain.
not the normal brain that he thought Fritz brought back to him. Good job, Fritz. Their conversation is cut short by the introduction of the monster played by Boris Karloff. And let me tell you, Boris is one hell of an actor in this role. He is fantastic. We could probably do a whole series just on him alone. We learn that the monster is afraid of fire, and Fritz does not like him either. They lock the monster in the cellar where Fritz tortures and irritates the monster. And that's not a good idea.
Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Listen, what's that? What's that?
He told you not to mess with it, Fritz. After the monster kills Fritz, they knock the monster out and hide him in the basement because Victor tells them that the Baron and Elizabeth are up on their way to see Henry. After that close call, Henry has kind of a nervous breakdown. Dr. Frankenstein blames himself for the monster killing Fritz and kind of realizes, yeah, it's time we got to get rid of this monster. He has Walden dismember the monster, or he tries to. With Dr. Frankenstein thinking the monster is being taken apart, Henry and Elizabeth finally set a wedding date.
Here's a health to a son of the House of Frankenstein.
A son to the House of Frankenstein.
So the toast the Baron makes here is kind of interesting. He makes a toast to a son in the House of Frankenstein. But in Henry's own mind, he already has a son when he created the monster. The monster escapes and runs into the countryside. He stumbles upon this young girl named Maria, played by Marilyn Harris. The monster seems so innocent here playing with the girl, just picking up flowers, throwing them into the lake, and watching them float. The monster throws the girl in the lake over a sudden state of joy, not realizing what he's done till it's too late. Henry learns that Walden has been killed, and they think the monster has come to the house to look for him. They run all around the house trying to find it when actually it's in Elizabeth's room.
It's Elizabeth!
The monster doesn't hurt her, but he takes off again into the countryside. Maria's father, Ludwig, played by Michael Marks, brings her body into the village. He wants to know who killed his daughter. He wants justice, and this gets the village all up in arms. They postpone the wedding so Henry can kill the monster. He tells Victor to look after Elizabeth until he gets back. The mob sets out to find Frankenstein's monster. Henry finds the monster first, and the monster knocks him out cold and drags him to this old windmill that's close by. The monster hides to the top of the old windmill. Henry tries to escape, but the monster tosses him off the top. So with that, the villagers burn it down. The monster tries to escape in terror, but screams in horror as flames engulf the entire windmill, and his body is buried under burning wood. Henry is brought back home to Elizabeth, still knocked out but alive. The movie ends with the monster destroyed, or so we think, and the Baron makes a toast again to a son for the House of Frankenstein. The end. This film is a classic in every sense of the word. The set design and cinematography for this film is astounding and amazing. Every scene is just so portrayed so beautifully. Each looks awesome, even to this day. Colin plays such a fantastic, deranged, devoted mad scientist to his work. He really steals the show. Every line that he delivers has such power behind it. And Boris Karloff is equally amazing as the monster. He has such feeling while he's acting under all that makeup. You really feel for him too when he accidentally kills the girl Maria. There's too many good things to say about this movie, but trust me, it is a very long list of good things. Do I recommend this film? Fuck yeah. Grab some beers and a pizza and check out Frankenstein. The Bride of Frankenstein, which is a fantastic follow-up to Frankenstein. It might even be the best sequel in the Universal Monster Movies universe. Sometimes sequels are hard. Sometimes they bomb. Sometimes they surpass the originals.
Stay here. I'll be back.
James Whales returns to direct this 1935 horror classic. After the opening credits and title screen, we settle on these three having a conversation, and all we need to know though is that this is Mary Shelley. After a quick recap of the first movie, she tells the two fellows that she has a part 2 to her book. This is Elsa Lancaster, and we might see her again later. She opens her tale with the villagers all standing around the burning windmill from the first movie. The mouthpiece here is Uma O'Connor as Minnie. She kinda comes and goes in this movie. Everyone leaves but Hans. This is Maria's father from the first movie. This time he's played by Reginald Barlow. He stays because he wants to see the monster's dead body, but he falls into the water below the windmill, and guess who else is down there? Boris Karloff returns to play the monster, and he's just as terrifying in this one as he was in the first one. Oh yeah, this is his wife, played by... Okay, never mind. They bring Henry back to the castle. They think he's dead. This is Elizabeth, played by Valerie Hobson this time. Nope, Henry is still alive, and Colin Clive is back to play Dr. Frankenstein.
What a terrible wedding night.
That night, while recuperating from the day before, they get a knock on the door from a Dr. Pretorius, played by Ernest Thesiger. He comes to see Henry about joining together to work on a new project. Henry wants nothing to do with him, but the doctor persuades him to come see what he's been up to. If you couldn't tell already, this is our new mad scientist for this movie.
But this isn't science. It's more like black magic.
Pretorius tells Dr. Frankenstein that he grew his experiments. He didn't create life the way that he did, but he wants to try to create a mate for the monster. This time a female monster. One thing I forgot to mention from the first movie is Jack Pierce's awesome and unbelievably good-looking makeup effects here. He did a fantastic job in the first movie, and he did an even better job in the second one, if you ask me. This is an interesting scene. The monster saves a girl from drowning, but then is blamed for trying to kill her. Once again, the village is alerted to the monster, and they're all going after him. I'm gonna guess this guy is dead. They tie the monster up to a pole, and honestly torture the poor fiend. They put him in a dungeon and chain him up. But it doesn't take long for him to escape. I'm going to count that as a death, too. Yep, he's dead, too. Okay, this is getting out of hand now. After a hectic escape from the town, the monster finds an old blind hermit in the woods. This hermit's name is, well, the Hermit, played by O.P. Heggie. And he befriends the monster, treats him like, well, a human being.
Good.
Their playtime is cut short, though, by, holy shit, that's James Carradine.
Look, it's the monster.
The two hunters engage in a fight with the monster and accidentally light the old man's house on fire. This movie's set design isn't as awesome as the first one, but it's still pretty goddamn impressive. There are a few visuals here that are just truly amazing. The atmosphere in the graveyard, for example, is really creepy. Well, look who's still robbing graves. Dwight Fry is back. This time it's Pretorius' sidekick, Carl. Also there's Ludwig, played by Ted Billing. They're gathering bones for their female monster. The two leave the crypt, Pretorius stays to have a drink. And then the monster joins him. He also tries to befriend the monster. Uh-oh, let's see where this is gonna go. Pretorius once again goes to see Henry to try to persuade him one more time to help him. Henry's still reluctant, so the doctor tries another method of persuasion. The monster kidnaps Elizabeth. Now he has to help if he ever wants to see her again. Alive. I like the scene of him going down the steps and talking to himself. It's a throwback to the first one. Once again, they use lightning to bring the mate to life. They launch the kites into the storm to harness the power. This lab just looks so amazing. Oh, it's such a good sight to see. Up top where the kites are, the monster decides to throw Carl off the top. But this is the second time Dwight Fry has been killed by Boris Karloff. They bring the bride to life using the lightning, and we get to hear Colin use those awesome words once again.
She's alive! Alive!
And for those of you that have already guessed it, yes, that's Elsa Lancaster as the bride. I think that's a pretty cool touch to have the actress that played Mary Shelley also play the monster's bride.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
The monster meets his new lady friend and she's just not interested. Elizabeth is also able to get loose and joins the meeting with the monsters. Frankenstein's monster is pretty upset that she doesn't like him. Once he sees Elizabeth willing to die with Henry, he says,
Yes, go. You live. You stay. We belong dead.
so he decides to pull the switch on him and Pretorius and his bride. He buries himself under the tower's rubble. The movie ends with Henry and Elizabeth looking on at the smoldering remains. The end. Love that question, the credits for the bride. Just like the monster in the first one. And it really was a great cast, and a great follow-up to the first movie. I really feel this was just as good, if not better, than Frankenstein. The cast was great. The only drawback was Minnie, because she was really fucking annoying. Thesiger is very animated in the way he talks and moves. He's never boring when he's on screen either. He's a very talented actor, but I still think Dr. Frankenstein, once again, kills it. Every time he's on screen, he's amazing. The way he delivers lines, the way you can kind of slowly see him losing his mind again while they're creating the girl monster. Boris Karloff, again, is also very, very awesome in this movie. The monster's a bit more dopier in this one, almost childlike. He starts off as this killing force, but then he kind of starts to learn that, hey, maybe I can be human too. And it's a really interesting transformation to watch during the entire movie. Do I recommend this movie? Absolutely. Especially if you watch the first one. Both movies are only just around an hour and 15 minutes. You could probably kill both of them in one afternoon. Like I always say, grab a pizza and some beers and watch The Bride of Frankenstein. The Son of Frankenstein, directed by Roland V. Lee. This is a 1939 horror classic. I'm going to start off right by saying that. Why is it great? Well, first off, we get Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi in the same movie, and that's pretty much all we need, really. After our opening credits, we open up to a town council discussion about what to do with the fact that Henry Frankenstein has passed away, and now his son is coming to inherit the castle. It's the town clerk's job to deliver the papers to his son, letting him know the castle is his. But they really don't want to do that because they want to move on and not have to deal with any more of these Frankensteins. They really don't want him to pick up where his father left off, but they decide to give him the papers anyways. They are going to watch him real close, and probably be dicks to them too. Real nice. On the train heading to the village, we meet Elsa von Frankenstein, played by Josephine Hutchison, tucking in Peter von Frankenstein, played by Donnie Dungan. She's all set tucking him in. She goes and talks to her husband, Wolf von Frankenstein, played by Basil Rothbone. He is pretty optimistic about moving out to the castle. They came all the way from America to live here. He's had a little bit of trouble over the years bearing the Frankenstein name. It hasn't been easy for him. They get to the village and the residents pretty much say hello and fuck off.
We come to meet you, not to greet you.
Tough crowd. That storm is wild, though. They get to the castle and it's, okay. Not as good looking as from the first two movies. He finds a letter addressed to him from his late father saying, "Hey man, you can carry on my work, or don't. Either way, enjoy being here." Inspector Krog, played by Lionel Atwill, comes to pay a visit to Frankenstein. He wants to let him know that he's kind of in danger. Of whom? Well, the villagers, and pretty much just him being a Frankenstein. He doesn't want him to follow in his father's footsteps. Frankenstein tells him the legend of the monster is mostly fabricated. He doubts the monster is even that evil. Well, Krog met the monster face to face and kind of tore his arm off.
Grab me by the arm. One doesn't easily forget here, Baron. An arm torn out by the roots.
The following day, Wolf goes to check out the old tower that was his father's lab. Wolf finds this fellow living in the tower, Igor, played by Bela Lugosi. And he's got an odd story of how he was hanged and didn't die.
They hanged me once, Frankenstein. They broke my neck. They said I was dead.
And he's got something else to show Wolf. The tomb of his father.
My father.
And the monster. Boris Karloff is back as the monster for his third time. Igor tells him the monster's kind of on the fritz, and he needs fixing. Wolf decides to fix the monster. Not because he's Igor's friend, but because he wants to help clear his family name. Wolf fixes up his old father's lab, and gets to work on the monster. He has his butler, Benson, played by Edgar Norton, help him with his experiments. The town council gets uneasy with Frankenstein bringing all these tools and equipment to the castle, so they interrogate Igor. Quick side note, there's only 2 left from the original 8. If you haven't guessed it already, Igor was using the monster to get revenge on the guys that convicted him. But unfortunately, the monster was struck by lightning and kind of put him out of commission. System overload, if you will. The inspector comes for lunch, and Peter almost spills the beans about a giant coming to see him in his room.
A giant coming here woke me up.
A giant? What an imagination.
No, Amelia, it wasn't imagination.
Wolf isn't cool with that, so he tells Igor he must never leave the tower remains. If the townspeople find out there's another monster, they will definitely storm the castle.
It's alive.
Alive, you mean?
Yes, alive, alive.
But you...
There it is. Now the monster works again. Igor sets out to get his revenge. village doctor thinks it was an accident, but the inspector thinks something else is going on here. The driver died in a similar way to the other 6 councilmen that died. Speaking of councilmen...
No! Hadouken!
Quirk goes to talk to Peter about the giant from earlier. He finds Benson's watch, so we can pretty much assume Benson's been killed. Quirk then goes to see Wolf one more time.
I've never seen you disturbed before, Inspector. Well, you've even forgotten to take off your hat.
Not forgotten here, Baron. Merely a matter of form.
And this part, honestly, is Basil's best acting in the whole movie, trying to remain calm while he's slowly going insane. He goes to find Igor, and Crow goes to search the house for that giant again. He discovers Igor's secret path to the castle from the lab. Frankenstein shoots Igor when he finds him. The monster goes on a rampage after he finds Igor's dead body. The monster goes and takes Peter to the lab. Wolf, Elsa, and Crow all try to go save the boy. The monster seems to want to befriend the boy more than hurt him. That is, until Quark pulls a gun on him. And then Wolf swings in and knocks the monster into the sulfur pit below. The Frankensteins then say, fuck this place, and give the deeds to the estate to the village and say, do what you want with them. Then they hop a train and get out of Dodge. The end. This one is definitely an awesome part 3. A lot better than The Creature Walks Among Us, I'll be honest. Boris doesn't really do a whole lot to the 1 hour mark in the movie, but he's still great as the monster when he is. Basil is just as intense as Colin in the first 2 movies. He is just fantastic, and Atwill is also a really good actor in this movie. He almost steals the show with him trying to get, Wolf to admit that there's a monster somewhere. The story is really good, and it continues so well from the first 2. This movie definitely calls for some beers and pizza, and enjoy The Son of Frankenstein.
The Ghost of Frankenstein.
Here we go with part 4. 1 through 3 was pretty good, so 4 has to be good, right? Released on March 13th, 1942, not too long after America began the Second World War in December of 41. This is directed by Erie C. Kenton. Starting off, we got a spooky-looking forest in the background there of our title. Looks an awfully lot like the one from The Wolfman, though. Maybe that's because this time Lon Chaney is playing the monster. Yeah, no Boris, unfortunately. Bela Lugosi is back as Igor. We pick up just after Wolf and his family left the castle. The village is done with the monsters this time. They want the castle destroyed.
Destroy the castle!
Hey, look, it's Dwight Fry. He's back. And that's exactly what they do. They blow up the castle. Igor is still alive somehow. He's able to escape, and on his way out, he finds his buddy, the monster, who fell in the sulfur pit at the end of the last movie. He needs some fixing, though, so they head to find the second son of Frankenstein. This time, the son of Frankenstein, his name is Ludwig, and he's played by Cedric Hardwicke. He is a psychologist/brain surgeon, and this is his colleague, Dr. Bowman, played by Lionel Atwill. Glad to have him back. Unfortunately, though, he's kind of our bad guy in this one. He's Ludwig's mentor. In this situation, it seems like the student surpassed the teacher. Something with one of his experiments went wrong, and that's why Frank is actually number 1 and not him. The monster and Igor stroll into town and, well, get in trouble right away. All he was doing was helping the girl get her ball down after that kid kicked it up there. He's a nice guy. Well, the town doesn't see it that way. This is Eric, played by Ralph Bellamy. Remember him from The Wolfman?
Wolf, gypsy woman, murder, what is this?
And this is Elsa Frankenstein, played by Everly Atkins, who was also in The Wolfman.
Yes, I'm afraid I do.
So now we have 4 people from last year's Halloween special because Bella and Lon were also in The Wolfman, which was actually released on December 9th, 1941. So it actually came out not too long before this one. So it's like, hey, we're done shooting this movie. Everybody hop over here. We're going to start shooting this one. Eric has come to see Dr. Frankenstein about the monster that they captured in town. They think he's just a madman. The doctor says, sure, I'll come see him, but after I meet with old Igor. Igor blackmails Frankenstein, helping him fix the monster because he tells him He'll tell the whole village the story of his family and this monster if he doesn't. So, Frankenstein has to help him now because he's got a good reputation with this village. While he's in town examining the monster, Elsa goes through his notes. She finds her grandfather's notes, Henry Frankenstein. And we get a quick backstory on what he did in case you didn't know already. Igor and the monster sneak into Frankenstein's lab, and the monster makes himself at home. But the good doctor was ready, and he gasses the beast. Frankenstein tells Bowman that he needs his help to destroy the monster. He needs to reverse what his father did.
It was made limb by limb, organ by organ. It must be unmade in the same way. Dissection, bit by bit, piece by piece.
Bowman tells him he can't help him because the monster is technically alive, and that would be murder.
I cannot be part of your plan.
Frankenstein then gets a visit from his dead father, or something, a floating entity or something like that. Yeah, this animation effect doesn't look so good, kinda goofy. But he tells him that he alone can fix the monster. But he needs to give him a new brain first because he put the brain of a murderer in there by mistake. So, he decided he's gonna switch the brain out with the guy who the monster killed when he first entered the lab. That was Dr. Kettering, by the way, was his name. Igor is not happy with what Frankenstein wants to do with switching the two brains, so he suggests using his brain. But Frankenstein says, no, that's okay, buddy, no thanks. Igor is a sly, cunning SOB. He somehow convinces Bowman to put his brain inside the monster's body. He cons Bowman by saying, hey, look, man, you'll be way more famous than Frankenstein and the leading scientist in your field. And like we said earlier, Bowman's a little jealous of Frankenstein that he's the #1 guy, so he definitely wants to take that spot. So they pull this brain swap. It has to be done at the same exact time. Frankenstein works on the monster while he thinks Bowman is working on Kettering, but he's really pulling Igor's brain.
Better death than a life like this.
And this wouldn't be a Frankenstein movie without an angry mob. And they're heading right for Frankenstein's house, because they believe that he's got the monster in the basement and he's hiding him. Eric rides ahead and tries to get Frankenstein one more time to give up the monster. Frankenstein gives in and brings Eric to see what he's been up to. Thinking he was showing him Kettering's brain inside the monster's body.
You are Dr. Kettering. I am not Dr. Kettering. I am Igor.
This is where the doctor realizes that Bowman double-crossed him.
This is your work. Don't touch him, Frankenstein. He's my friend. Bowman! Where are you? Here I am. I can see you. You didn't realize his blood is the same type as Kettering's, but not the same as Igor's. It will not feed the sensory nerves.
So Igor is pretty pissed that Bowman didn't think about this beforehand, so he kills him. Going blind, the monster destroys the lab in his rage. And he burns the house down too. Nice house. The rubble topples on top of the monster, and he's buried underneath it. But unfortunately, so is the good doctor. Pretty sure his idea was thinking, if I don't live, well, no one can carry on this work anymore and the monster will finally be destroyed. Elsa and Eric make it out okay. And the end. This one was a fairly strong entry in the Frankenstein series. Not the best one, but it's not bad either. The intro starts out really well, and the ending is pretty climactic too. A little bit of a drag in the middle, but hey, it's okay. Lon Chaney does alright as the monster. He's no Boris Karloff, that's for sure. He's kind of more of a softer monster. Bella is great again as Igor, and how he corrupts Bowman to get him to get his brain inside the monster. Lionel is also good as a bad guy this time, but he's always awesome. The whole cast is actually really great, to be honest. Cedric plays a very arrogant Frankenstein, but he's good at it. He almost seems like he'd fit the family. He's got a little bit of Basil, and he's got a little bit of Colin in him, so he's pretty good. The scenery in this one is mostly the basement lab, but it looks pretty cool a couple times. The plot, though, is solid. So what's my suggestion? Grab a pizza and some beers,
and check out The Ghost of Frankenstein.
The House of Frankenstein, released in 1944 on December 15th, which was the day before the Battle of the Bulge. Man, these Universal monster movies seem to have it happening right around big World War II events. Anyway, this one was again directed by Earl C. Kenton. This was his second Frankenstein film. Got a lot going on in this one, so let's get going. We got Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney, John Carradine, and Lyon Atwell. Okay, the cast is looking pretty good for this one already. Who we have here is Dr. Newman, played by... Oh wait, Boris Karloff isn't the monster? He's Dr. Newman, and his prison buddy, Daniel, played by J. Carl Nash. They are fresh out the slammer pretending to be the famous Professor Lampini and his assistant, who they killed. They want to get to the village of Frankenstein and get their hands on the original Dr. Frankenstein's notes to continue his work. And Neiman pretty much promises Daniel a better body if he helps him out. Neiman, at the same time, though, wants to get revenge on those that put him in prison in the first place. One group checking out the exhibit of the traveling show, Inspector Arn, played by Lionel Atwell, Rita and her husband Carl, played by Annie Gwen, and Peter Coe, who escaped a Nazi POW camp when he was 19 before filming this movie. Absolutely crazy. And Burgermaster Hoosman, played by Sig Ruman. One of the gimmicks that Lampini has is the skeleton of the original Count Dracula. Is it really, though? Well, there's only one way to find out. Gotta pull the stake from the heart. And it turns out to be the real Count Dracula. He's his master. Dracula's played by John Carradine, and Neiman sends him to kill the Burgermaster. He is one of the men who sent him to prison for his experiments. By the time Carl finds his grandfather dead, the Count already has Rita. Carl and Arntz are after Dracula to save Rita. He heads back to Neiman and Daniel. Neiman and Daniel don't want to get caught, so they dump Dracula's coffin and say, "Hey, sorry man, you're on your own for now." And on top of that, the sun is coming out. They get Rita back once Dracula burns up from the sun. And she's freed from his power. And that's it for John Carradine in this film. Well, it was nice having you, man. The end. Well, at least for these characters. Neiman and Dan get to the village of Frankenstein. This is where they meet dancing girl Ianka, played by Ellen Verdolo. Danny kind of has the hots for her, and he saves her from getting beaten up. Neiman and Dan find a way into the ruins of Castle Frankenstein. They find a lot more than they thought they would. Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman. So I guess this movie kind of picks up after Frankenstein versus the Wolfman. So it's kind of like a sequel to that one and a sequel to the Frankenstein stories. So what do? They thought them out, of course. What could possibly go wrong? Lon Chaney returns as Larry Talbot once again. He is pretty much more depressed than ever. He sought out Frankenstein in hopes that he could cure him and free him from the curse of the werewolf. Neiman, of course, takes advantage of him and says, "Hey man, if you can help me find Frankenstein's records, I'll cure you." And of course, Larry knows exactly where they are. Larry joins their crew as the driver. He meets Ianka, and Daniel gets a little jealous of this. Larry gets a little impatient, saying, "Hey man, when are you gonna fix me?" Neiman needs certain parts to fix the monster, so him and Daniel kidnap a couple of the guys that testified against him to use their bodies as experimental parts. Even after all this, Neiman breaks his promise to Danny and says, "Sorry man, I probably can't fix you." And this makes Dan pretty angry. Also, Ianka confesses her love for Larry to him, and she tells him she hates him.
I hate you. You're mean. And you're ugly. I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!
Man, this poor kid can't catch a break. And while all this is going on, the moon is rising into the sky. And we know what that means for Larry. The villagers find the dead body and set out to find the Wolfman. Meanwhile, Neiman gets the monster working and the villagers see lights coming from his lab, so they decide to investigate. Ayaka tries to help Larry by shooting him with a silver bullet, but she can't, because she loves him. But when Larry attacks her, she has no problem pulling the trigger then. She gets him with the silver bullet, freeing him from the curse. But unfortunately, this calls for him to die. And she dies too, so 4 and 5 dead here? So Daniel is pretty upset and blames Neiman for all the shit that's going on around him. And he's probably also pretty pissed off for breaking his promise, so he slaps him around. But the monster sees this and decides to, help Danny out the window. The monster is played by Glenn Strange this time, by the way. The villagers see this in the castle and storm in. Remember, Frankenstein movie equals angry mob. They force the monster carrying Neiman into the nearby swamp. They get caught in the bog and... the end. Well, that ended pretty quickly. So this movie felt a little bit strange compared to the other Frankenstein movies. It felt like they had 2 different scripts, and they weren't sure how to finish either of them, so they combined them into one. We haven't gotten there yet, but Carradine isn't a horrible Dracula. He's no Bella, but he's still pretty creepy. Boris not being the monster was a pretty big letdown, but he plays a really good mad scientist also, so that's okay. The rest of the cast is also pretty good, but they all feel more like cameos though. The first story is a little more interesting if you ask me. I really wish they went deeper into that one. But the second one's alright. This movie I feel like you can take or leave. Well, do I recommend this one? Yeah, why not? It's kind of fun. Grab some pizza and some beers and enjoy the House of Frankenstein. Well, I want to thank you all for watching and hope you have a safe and happy Halloween. Until next year's special, everyone.